Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and joining me on the show for the very first time, Ahmad Hicks from Fox 9. Ahmad, great to have you on the show, man. What's up?
Man, thanks for having me. I see all the success you're having with this show. I'm glad to be on this platform.
Well, we got the flags behind me, the nice picture, the nice microphone. As soon as that happened, everything took off, and enough lighting to make me look presentable. But no, it's been a great draft season. It's been a really fun off season for us here on the show, and I wanted to get you on, so I invented your own little bit for you because you work for
Okay.
Fox 9. I came up with 9 questions for you, or I should say that Vikings fans came up with 9 questions for you about the
Okay.
Vikings offseason and where they're going. But before we get into the questions, let me just get a take from you. The
Okay.
big picture on this offseason. Like what is your feeling about how strongly the Vikings came out of this offseason as a whole?
I think they hit a home run. Now, would I say it's a grand slam? No, I would say more it's like a three run home run at this point right now. I still think there's some other needs that need to be addressed before they step onto the field, for the first game of the season. But I certainly think they improved from the final game last season. You look at the interior offensive line, that was a huge problem for the Vikings the last couple of years. And what they did was really just put a band-aid over that problem. They finally addressed it, went out and spent some money, and then drafted someone in the first round for that interior offensive line. And then they also got better on the interior defensive line. So really proud of them for what they did there. I think they, added to the weapons that they already have, but you still want to see one veteran corner or a known proven corner that can kind of help out Byron Murphy Jr. and Jeff Okuda and all those guys. But other than that, I think the offseason was a huge success.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that because when we were down at the owners' meetings and Kevin O'Connell said to us that Brian Flores really believes in Isaiah Rodgers, I thought,
Mhm.
well, I don't think he's feeding us a line here. That's probably true, but I did wonder if they would address it in the draft. There's a handful of guys that are still out there, but I also wonder if they want to roll it out first and see what it looks like. I mean, if you remember last year, it wasn't until midway through camp, even more than halfway through camp, that Stephon Gilmore showed up. And there's a handful of veterans out there on the free agent market that they could wait and see and say, oh, we love how Isaiah Rodgers and Mekhi Blackman look. Or they could say, you know what, we're not loving this as much as we thought, and then go still sign somebody. Corner is one of those positions that there always seems to be one or two veterans that just slip through the cracks and are available during training camp.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring this topic up because I was actually talking to Brian Flores about this at the Gophers Pro Day, and we were talking about some of the corners that they brought in and some of the corners that they re-signed. And he said Byron Murphy Jr. I asked him, I said, is he a true number one corner in your defense, or is he a complementary corner where you have to have one more veteran or a stronger number one in front of him? And he looked me in my eyes and said, he's a number one. He can do everything that we asked of a number one corner. And he told me Isaiah Rodgers, if given the opportunity, he thinks he could be, pretty successful in the NFL. He said he loves what he's seen on tape from him, and he feels like he just needs to be put in the right position to succeed. And I asked him about Jeff Okuda. I was like, you're talking about a former first round draft pick that's bounced around a lot in the NFL so early on. I'm like, what did you see? He said, I think he's another one of those guys. If I can get my hands on him, put him in our scheme and put him in our situations, he was like, I think he could be a really good football player. He's like, when it comes to corners, he said, the thing is, I go to Kevin O'Connell, I go to Quasi in the offseason. He said, I look at the top dollar corners and I'm like, all right, can I pick from this list? He said, if I can't pick from that list, well, I have a number of other guys that are, a little bit more valuable, or not valuable, should I say, affordable, for the Vikings and what they're looking for. And he says, he can pick from anywhere and make it work for his system. And so it seems like he's pleased with the group that he has right now.
Right, and the other guy that we can't leave out is Dwight McGlothern as
Yeah.
well, that, we saw him last year really develop during training camp, and this is where there's a gap sometimes between kinda what we look at and what they know behind the scenes, because they've seen what somebody's work ethic is like, they watch the practice tape back. We're on the sideline at practice, we usually get one look at it, and then, they tell us we can't film anymore, so that we don't get to go back and look at the top version of all that stuff. So they may be more confident in someone like McGlothern than we are, just because we haven't seen it out on the field yet. So I am interested to see if they do something or if they just fully buy into this group. with what they have right now. So why don't we get into these 9 questions that were
Okay.
gathered? I threw it out on Twitter, said, "Hey, throw me all your last thoughts of the offseason for fans, and we'll run through them." So the first question I got was from Harry DC25. He said, "What is your realistic expectation for the Vikings season if JJ McCarthy plays like 2022 Kirk Cousins? If he is 2022 Kirk Cousins good, how many wins will the Vikings have this year? How good will the Vikings be if that's how good JJ McCarthy is?"
That's a really good question. I just think with the pieces that they have around him, Jordan Mason coming over and helping out Aaron Jones in that backfield, I just really think I won't say the sky's the limit because there will be growing pains with JJ McCarthy, obviously, this season. But I think you're talking like 11 wins. Anything under 11 wins, I think it's a letdown with this group. I think 11 wins kind of goes through the growing pains with JJ McCarthy, where he's able to weather the storm. But I just think with the playmakers around him, what they're building defensively, like I think he's going to be able to get the football back if he goes out there and commits a 3-and-out really fast. So I feel like he's going to grow from his mistakes. And I love something that he said the other day at the press conference, like through his ADHD, he feels most comfortable in front of 110,000 fans, like in the middle of the spotlight. So I think he's a guy that just will get better, as the season goes along. So I think anything short of 11 wins is a letdown for this team.
So I think from the person who asked here, Harry, the question being aimed at 2022 Kirk is interesting because I think that the stat line is kind of realistic for what we might expect from JJ McCarthy. That wasn't one of Kirk's huge stat line numbers for quarterback rating. He threw 29 touchdowns, 14 picks that year, but it was really the end of all those games. You remember how tense those were in 2022. Right, all the we're gripping our chairs in the press box every game at the end. And that I think we can't expect from a rookie right away. I know that McCarthy has a history of game-winning drives and stuff like that. He did that in the college football playoff against Alabama. But I mean, Kirk did it at an all-time crazy level that year. I think, yeah, he 8, which was the most ever in history. But if McCarthy, just from a stat line perspective, Ahmad, if he threw for also, if he throws for 4,500 yards, that's a lot. That'd be a lot of passing for McCarthy. But if it was something like that, 65% completion, 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 92.5 quarterback rating, I think 11 wins is a good number for that. I think that would be a very solid rookie season that could put them in position to compete for the North.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the stat line that you just threw out, that will compete, I think, anywhere in the National Football League, whether it's the NFC North, the NFC West. I mean, you just want him to go out there and compete. And if you're talking about 29 touchdowns, well, this team should be pretty darn good, I believe. So, JJ McCarthy, do I think he will throw for, 4,000 yards and 29 touchdowns? Probably not. I think they want to take the ball out of his hands just a little bit, and that's why they brought over Jordan Mason, kind of control the clock, make things a little bit easier for him, as the season progresses, and then he can start taking those shots down the field. But I mean, then again, with wide receivers like Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, and then Ty Felton they just brought over, it's going to be exciting. They have a lot of speed and playmakers to help JJ McCarthy out.
I'm so curious about it because Kevin O'Connell can't help himself, right?
Oh
He can't lean on
no.
the run. I think someone else is going to ask that question a little later, but I think with JJ McCarthy that there's a little bit of an expectation that they will try to play it more conservative, lean on the run. I just am not sure that he can actually do that because they did at the beginning of last season with Darnold. And then as soon as Darnold got the offense down, he's like, whatever, let's just throw every
We're gonna
play.
sling it, yeah.
And I think that if he likes the way that McCarthy looks throwing the ball early on, he's going to be very much pass first Kevin O'Connell. So, I mean, 4,500 yards is a ton, but if it was hovering around 4,000, I would not be terribly shocked. Next
No.
question comes from G Beck TV. Says, where do the offensive and defensive lines rank for you league wide? Maybe a high end outcome, worst case scenario, and median outcome feels like the best trench setup for the Vikings in ages. What do you think? Where do the offensive and defensive lines rank for you league wide?
On paper has to be top 5 on both sides, right? I mean, you're talking about Ryan Kelly, a guy who ton of years of experience, former Alabama player. So you're talking about a guy who's won at the highest level before. And then Will Fry's coming over. You saw the success Jonathan Taylor had. I mean, he just exploded at the end of the season, long run after long run. So I think it's just going to open up a ton of lanes for Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. Then you talk about two of the best tackles that you have in football, and Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill. I mean, so it's like you look at this offensive line and you just gush about the possibilities that they have this season. If they can run the ball effectively and hit for 6 yards a carry, man, that just opens up the entire playbook. So Kevin O'Connell can, hit those play actions and pass a lot that he loves to do. Defensively, though, oh my goodness. I mean, you talk about Jonathan Allen, Andrew Van Ginkel, Dallas Turner, like the success that they were able to have last year with just minimal, talent, interior defensive line. Now you add a Javon Hargrave, you add Jonathan Allen, and you still throw in a Jalen Redmond who was having success towards the end of last season. I mean, the depth is just there for that team where they can get after quarterbacks and just be relentless, especially in Brian Flores' fronts, where they confuse the quarterback and those young quarterbacks and whatnot. So I think if you look on paper right now, this is a top five offensive line and a top five defensive line. And I think, especially defensively, it. That's why the Vikings extended Andrew Van Ginkel, because they know the type of production they're getting from him.
Folks, I'm trying a new thing to try to stop going to fast food restaurants all the time with my busy schedule. It is called Tempo Meals. Tempo is a weekly delivery service that delivers chef crafted meals from a dietitian approved menu fresh to your door. Their perfectly portioned lunches and dinners take the guesswork out of eating. They're fully prepared. They can be heated up in the microwave in just 3 minutes. This is easy when we're on free agency watch. I've got another box just showing up the other day, and talk about easy and delicious. I got the Korean beef quesadilla, Tuscan butter shrimp, and barbecue chicken. All of them were easy, super quick to make, and not all of them have to be chicken and beef. They've got tons of different options for you. For a limited time, Tempo is offering my listeners 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/purple insider. That is tempomeals.com/purple insider. 60% off your first box. Tempomeals.com/purple insider. Rules and restrictions apply. Right. In years past, we would have said best case scenario, maybe they're just good enough to survive. And that was really the case when Darrisaw was still in last year, that I thought they had an above average offensive line. As soon as he went out, not so much. And that's what the questions are all going to be about for both of these trenches, because I agree with you that they have the potential to be that if Jonathan Allen is what he was maybe 2 years ago and Javon Hargrave was what he was 2 years ago. Like, if that happens, then absolutely they're going to be completely dominant, because I think we can lock in what Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel are. I don't know if he's going to have the pick sixes for this year, but we know he's going to be effective in coverage. We know he's going to rush the passer pretty well, and that he fits perfectly in this defense. I also think that Dallas Turner, if he takes a big step forward, you're talking about an additional weapon to that. And the same goes for some of the other developmental guys on defense. Levi Drake Rodriguez, Taki Taimani. We saw a little bit from them last year, but they didn't go out and get more depth guys. So there's going to be an opportunity there. I think it just entirely comes down to, how does Ryan Kelly stay healthy? The last 2 years, he has, I think, about 1,400 total snaps. If he only plays 700 this year, that's not really going to be what you're looking for. And I think Will Fry should come back okay, but there's just a lot of those kind of question marks hovering in the air. And even with Donovan Jackson, I'm impressed by him. I'm sure you were when you listened to his press conference as
Yeah.
well, but he's still a rookie trying to play guard in the NFL. What is that learning curve like? Because in other top five offenses and defenses, maybe they don't have a rookie that they're asking to do as much as Donovan Jackson.
Yeah, and Donovan Jackson has a lot on his plate when you're talking about the NFC North and just the way these defensive lines are built all the way across the board. So yes, that's why I said they have the potential to be a top five offensive line on paper right now. I believe they are, but you have to go out there and go prove that. Now, I do think it's going to take some time for Donovan Jackson to mesh with the rest of the offensive line. But I think having a guy like Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, who hopefully comes back from injury, and ready to go full speed, and then Darisaw right there to help him, especially Darisaw, because you remember that play that he made during the season where he's blocking a guy down, then he just flips his hips, turns around blindly, and picks up another guy. Having a guy like that alongside you is going to be a weapon because he's going to be able to tell you a lot of things that maybe an inexperienced guard playing next to an inexperienced tackle wouldn't be able to capture. And so I think that'll help Donovan Jackson, but certainly there will be growing pains for him, seeing how these guys don't play a lot during the preseason. So he'll be learning on the job, and I'm sure his best football will be towards the end of the season.
I think to address specifically the high end outcome, I mean, worst case scenario is always just that everybody gets hurt. Like that's every position group, no matter what, because we
Right.
play football here. But the median outcome of trying to project it the most reasonably we can, I still think is top 10 for both units because they've built up depth on the offensive line to where if Donovan Jackson isn't ready right away, Blake Brandel can step in. They brought in Justin Skol as a left tackle to be able to start if Darisaw isn't ready. So it's not like if one thing goes wrong that the entire unit collapses. I think
Right.
both of them at median case scenario are probably pretty darn good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they're good enough to compete not only in the NFC, but the entire NFL. So I think Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, Kevin O'Connell, Brian Flores, they've done a tremendous job of putting the right team on paper to go out there and compete. Now they just have to get the job done.
All right, let's go to our next question. Comes from Stain12. Says the Vikings seem to still be talked about like they're well below the conference leaders, the Eagles and the Lions, in terms of their rosters. But when we look at it, there doesn't seem to be any real weak spots. Is it just a prove it situation, or are we still not there yet this year? And that goes to the over under 8.5. As far as I saw, it didn't move from where the Vikings were in the draft, but they only got 5 players and 1 guard. So I didn't
Right,
expect it
right.
to take a massive jump one way or the other. But if they're being looked at from the outside world, Ahmad, with being below the Eagles and Lions for roster wise, is that fair or should they be in that conversation?
I think it's fair right now. I think it's fair because when you look at these other teams and what they've accomplished, they've won. They've, won division championships. They've gone to the Super Bowl. When you talk about the Eagles, I mean, these dudes are drafting like first rounders that were on national championship teams, like guys that play at a really high level. Do the Vikings have players that play at a high level? Absolutely. But when you look at the entire Eagles defensive front, it feels like every guy was an SEC starter on a championship team or, a SEC championship team. So, like, yes, there's levels when it comes to like rosters and things like that. Are the Vikings one of the top tier teams in the NFL? Probably not right now. But are they one of the top 10 teams in the NFL? Yes. And I think the only way you become a top tier team or a top tier roster is winning when it matters. And I think getting to the playoffs is that first hurdle. But now you have to get over that hurdle and you have to prove that you're one of those top tier talented rosters that can get the job done because you can be as good as you want during 17 games in the regular season. But if you fold during week 1 of the playoffs, well, are you really that talented? Is your roster really that good? So I think, yes, on paper they are, but they have to go prove it.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that, with the Eagles, they just deserve the benefit of the doubt. Even if they lost some talent from last year in the form of Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, they've always had other guys coming through the pipeline on that D line. And then you go through the rest of their team, they've got the weapons, they've got the running game, they've got the quarterback, they've got really the secondary is incredible for
Everything.
them with Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell. So it's not only just not weak spots, it's also just stars all over the field for them. I think you can make largely the same argument for the Vikings. The difference is that Jalen Hurts has won the Super Bowl and been to another one, and we haven't seen JJ McCarthy play. But if you went position by position, I think you can make a pretty good case. The Lions, on the other hand, I think their roster is probably the best top to bottom in the entire NFL. I mean, when it just every single position, their offensive line is still very strong. Their defense, with Aiden Hutchinson coming back, is going to get better. I think even schematically, they could improve from where they were last year. I think Aaron Glenn's a great leader of men, but sometimes I felt like the Vikings were a step ahead of them. But it's not far. Like the gap has been closed, I think, a lot. But
Yes.
until we really see it play out on the field, like we're so far away from that, then I think those teams deserve the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I think you give credit where credit is due. And right now, those teams have gone out and shown the beginning stages of their development. They've trusted the process. They've gotten over I wouldn't say gotten over to the mountaintop, but the Eagles did. But the Lions are right there. They're climbing up that mountain. And I think the Vikings are right behind them. They're looking at the blueprint of success. And that's what the Vikings are doing right now. They're getting that offensive line, they're getting that defensive line. And then they're adding weapons around that. They have their young quarterback now where they can go out and go pay other guys, to make him look good. So are the Vikings right there? Yeah, but they're not there yet. They have to go out there and prove it this season.
I think, and they just need to answer some questions. I mean, we talked about the secondary a little, and we're saying, well, if Isaiah Rodgers, well, if Mekhi Blackman, well, and I'll throw Theo Jackson in this as well. Everybody loves Theo Jackson,
Yeah.
and we saw training camp and how good he was, but he has only played a handful of snaps in his career. I think the Eagles and Lions have fewer of those players where we're
Mhm.
saying, hey, this guy has to show that he can do it than maybe the Vikings do.
Yeah, for
The
sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, and then you just look at like the guys that they threw in last year and the impact that they were making right away. You talk about Queion Mitchell, you talk about Cooper DeJean, you talk about Reed Blankenship, like all these guys that were just like plug and play players. And then you add a guy like Jahai Campbell, from Alabama and, early on in the draft. So it's just like the rich just get a little richer in that situation. And the benefit for them is their first round draft picks didn't have to step in and play right away, but it was a luxury for them to have if they did need to play right away. And I think right now you look at the Vikings where it's like, well, we kind of need our best players to be our best players. Like that's the way to success. Whereas you look at the Eagles and it's like, well, if one person goes down, they still got another first rounder or another second rounder that they're ready to roll out. So the Vikings are almost there, though, almost.
Next question comes from, I'm not sure how to pronounce this entirely. Kufulch. I'm sure that's not right. But here's the question anyway. It's a good question. When the season arrives, especially in critical situations, will KOC really run a balanced offense and lean on the run game? There have been times in previous years when the run game has been working, but he has reverted back to throwing it too often, in my opinion. Do you think KOC can actually believe in the run game, Ahmad?
That's a really good question. Um, I feel like Kevin O'Connell gets like me when I'm playing football video games. Sometimes you just get a little pass heavy because like you got a good quarterback, you got a lot of weapons, and you just want to throw the ball because it's a lot more fun. It's a lot easier sometimes, and things happen a lot quicker. I don't think they went out and got Jordan Mason for no reason though. I don't think they went out and got Will Fries and Ryan Kelly for no reason. Like I think these guys are they're gonna help the Vikings and Kevin O'Connell make that next commitment to the running game because I feel like the lanes are gonna open up so much more that he's just going to be like, man, we're getting 7 to 8 yards a pop. We got to keep running the ball. Like, whereas last year, the last couple of years, you had to fight for every yard. Like Aaron Jones got a couple of big plays that we hadn't seen, since the prime of Dalvin Cook. But it was like, all right, he's still working hard for these 4 to 5 yards. Whereas I think it will be a lot easier to commit to the running game because you'll have a little bit more success. You'll have a thunder lightning type backfield, that we've seen around the NFL. So but that being said, if JJ McCarthy goes out there and shows he can sling the ball with the best of them, and Ty Felton is this guy they've been looking for, as a number three receiver to get on the edge and be a decoy to get Justin Jefferson open. You could also see Kevin O'Connell throwing the ball, 65% of the time during the game, maybe 60%. So that's a really tough question. I really just think that boils down to how healthy the offensive line is and how good that running game is the first couple of weeks. Because if they're good enough to average 6 yards a carry, then I think certainly you have to commit to the running game and it makes it a little bit easier to commit to it.
One thing that I think we all do just because we all watch every single Vikings game, whether it's you and I covering it or every single Vikings fan, is sometimes we can really latch on to one subject or one thing that we feel like the coach doesn't do that well, but miss the big picture, which is that passing the ball still is driving success in the NFL.
Yeah.
I know the Eagles won the Super Bowl, but also Jalen Hurts was amazing throwing the football in the Super Bowl, was an efficient passer all year long. It's just that it's always going to drive success in the NFL who's passing the ball the best. So I don't want the head coach of the team to go, you know what? We're just going to run all the time. We're going to be in 2nd and 6 all the time. you want Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison to be the drivers of this offense, and
Right.
then for Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason to make the other team pay for putting all their attention onto Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. I think it's a pass sets up the run type of situation where I was critical last year at times, and they won all these games anyway, so it didn't matter what I said. But when you're up 21 points or 17 points against the Green Bay Packers, whatever it might be, a couple of touchdowns, and you throw an interception with Sam Darnold just outside the red zone, it's like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I think that they will trust the run more because of the personnel, but I also think that there's a little bit of a aggressive to the point of being a tad reckless at times when it comes to the game management. And maybe just having Mason there, having these offensive linemen can be encouraging to
Mm.
Kevin O'Connell to just blast somebody's face in at the end of a game. And he actually did it in one game. It was against Atlanta where they got up, they got the interception. Remember that? And then they ran, I think, 10 out of the next 12 plays and
Yeah.
closed out or something like that and closed out Atlanta. I don't think he's totally against it. I think he just believes in being aggressive so much to a point where he's like, hey, we're up 14 here. If we score a touchdown, then it's absolutely over, as
Right.
opposed to maybe running and settling for a field goal. And that is a delicate thing to walk, I think.
Yeah, I think that's just the former quarterback in Kevin O'Connell and believing in his guys and saying, you know what, here's the dagger. We got this play. We worked hard. We put this in our install this week. We got to make sure that we get it in. And if we get to this play, it's going to be a home run. Whereas it's like, you know what? Let's just hit them where it hurts. Let's just punch them over and over again, take their will, just end their souls and just go out here and finish the game that way. I think he's still learning that as a head coach. And I don't think that he's quite had the personnel to be able to go out there and go do those things. You look at Dalvin Cook, yes, he was good, but the offensive line wasn't great. So when you got in the goal line and the red zone, like you had a tough time running the football. The last couple of years, like I said, they've just put a band-aid over it. Whereas now they actually went out and addressed the situation and got better. And so I think now it will make his job a little bit easier as a play caller because he'll be able to say, you know what? On a third and goal on the 7 yard line or the 4 yard line, I don't need to trust my quarterback to find Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison or tight end delay going across the field. I can just turn around, hand it off to Jordan Mason, and go follow Ryan Kelly, go follow Christian Darrisaw, one of these guys to get in the end zone. And I think that's a luxury he's never had.
I think you're right that this will be the true test case. If
Mm.
he doesn't lean on the run this year a little bit more, then he's never going to do it no matter what, which I'm mostly okay with. But you're right. Some of that red zone stuff, you got 5 different receivers running all over the place in these tight, condensed areas, or you just hand it to Jordan Mason and he runs in the end zone. It's a lot easier. Next question comes from Skol Doc. Says, would you like to see the Vikings on Hard Knocks? Are they one of the more compelling teams for the show this year? Vikings on Hard Knocks. What do you think?
As much as I would want to see that because I'm a huge fan of inside sports documentaries where you get to go in the locker rooms and see the behind the scenes, I just don't think that you would see what you want to see on Hard Knocks from this team. I think Kevin O'Connell, I think Quasey, I think they will limit a lot of access in terms of what Hard Knocks is able to show us when it comes down to those episodes. I think Kevin O'Connell is a great guy, but he loves to get in his coach speak a little bit much, and he just gives you a lot of cliche answers. So he's not going to be one of those more entertaining guys. Although I do think that the relationship that he has with his players that we do get a glimpse of through the Vikings Entertainment Network, he is pretty comical and whatnot. But I just don't think the Vikings want JJ McCarthy to be in the spotlight, going into his first true season being a starting quarterback. I don't think they want all those cameras around him, all that added pressure and whatnot. So I just don't think, especially seeing how they don't have to be one of those teams that are signed up for it, I just don't think that we'll see them on that show as much as I would love to see them. We've gotten lucky with quarterback and wide receiver and Anthony Edwards and starting five all here in Minnesota. I just don't think we're going to get a hard knocks with Kevin O'Connell in there.
One of the things I think about with a Hard Knocks here is I'm not sure the fans would get much more than they usually get because this team under Kevin O'Connell has been so media friendly, to tell you the
Right.
truth. I mean, we have a lot of access to these players and a lot of them are available to us. I think it's gotten a lot easier under O'Connell than it was with Mike Zimmer. He encourages his players to be in the media and be on TV and talk. So you've heard a lot of their stories already. And I think that's what
Yeah.
Hard Knocks does really well, is tell some of these stories. I also think it's been smoothed over time because, as you mentioned, the teams do have say in what gets out there. And so a lot of the tension has been removed. Plus, if you have a team where they have a great culture, they get along with each other, they have a lot of good leaders and everything else, where is the conflict? Like, if you're going to make
Exactly.
great TV, there has to be conflict. And even like the crazy Antonio Brown Hard Knocks, like there's conflict there. I didn't think they did a good enough job of showing it, but where is the conflict? Really, it would just be, what is Kevin O'Connell's school of teaching a quarterback
Right.
really like inside of the room? And then again, how much of that are we actually going to see? So I don't think that they're one of the more compelling teams in that way. I think they're interesting that they have all these veteran players and a team that's trying to compete for the Super Bowl right now with a quarterback who's never played before. Like, that's interesting. But
Mhm.
aside from that, there's probably more circuses that Hard Knocks wants to be involved with. And the Vikings just are not that dramatic, man. I mean, over the last couple of years since KOC took over, it's just not the Vikings of old where it seemed to be a controversy all the time.
No, and you know what? If any hard knocks that the Vikings would be chosen for, I wouldn't want to see it for the one during the preseason. I would want to see the one like they did this past season with the AFC North. Like, follow around one of the best divisions in football. Show us that heated playoff push that teams are going to be on. I think that would be more compelling, because then you get into the week to week processes, the development, how guys are talking to their teams and bonding that, building that trust and that bond with one another. I think that would be more compelling for fans, especially from the NFC North standpoint, because every team has the capability of being really good this year. Like, every team has a chance of making the playoffs. You can't say that about every division. And so I think if the Vikings were to be on a hard knocks, that one that they did this previous season for the very first time would be the one that they should sign up for.
I 100% agree, because halfway through the season, we might be talking about that race being neck and neck and neck and neck between those four teams. And they're all in at this point, with
Right.
Caleb Williams in year two, the Lions feeling like if they don't do it this year, then who knows what's going to happen in the future. The Packers needing to really be sure about Jordan Love after this year. And
Mhm.
then yeah, no, I
Woo.
totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Juicy
just
storyline.
yeah, I definitely think so. So the next question from Joe Draft says, "What's Dallas Turner's role this year? Feels like a pivotal year, and what they gave up to get him significantly impacting the 2025 draft capital." Can I just say real quick first, can we just evaluate Dallas Turner as an NFL player on the Minnesota Vikings? It gets very tiresome to that every time they talk about, well, they gave up so much for him. It's like,
Right.
okay, well,
Right.
they gave up so much that if he's anything short of Bruce Smith or Reggie White, that we're going to be like, it wasn't enough. He only got 8 sacks. I mean, I get it. I get it. They moved up in the draft to get him, the whole thing. It had context with it. I think we can just evaluate him as, was he valuable to the Minnesota Vikings 2025 defense? We don't have to do the draft thing every single time we talk about him.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those old storylines where it's like, just let it go. Like, they gave up what they gave up for him. He's here. He's in the purple and gold. Let's just judge him off what he did. Last year, did he produce a lot? No. Did he show a lot of flashes? Absolutely. But I also think you have to look at, like, Jonathan Grenard in front of him, Andrew Van Ginkel. These were two of the best football players on defense last year. So who are you telling to step off the field so Dallas Turner can get in there? Right? You know what I'm saying? So give him a year to get acclimated to the NFL. Give him a year to figure out his routine, his regimen, and look at these guys and their work ethic. Develop some more moves, like put some more tricks in his bag, and then come back next season and put more on his plate and say, you know what? Now you've learned. Now we want you to contribute. And I can see a scenario where Dallas Turner, Andrew Van Ginkel, and Jonathan Grenard are all on the field at the same time. And good luck the quarterbacks and offensive lines trying to stop all of those guys at the same time. So I think as a first round draft pick, you have a lot of unwanted pressure put on your shoulders and a lot of expectations, lofty expectations at that. But I think Dallas Turner benefited from coming in a good situation, a good scenario where he didn't need to play right away. He didn't need to show all his flaws or his red flags, and where the Vikings could hide that and develop him more. And so I think he's only going to benefit from that this season.
As far as his role goes, they allowed Patrick Jones to go in free agency and he signed with
Mhm.
Carolina. I think the Patrick Jones role makes a lot of sense. He played
Yeah.
around 500 snaps last year. He was a dynamic player. They used him dropping back in coverage, they used him on third down rushes, they would rotate him in sometimes. I do think that it's okay, Brian Flores, if you take your best player off the field a little bit sometimes. I mean, Jonathan Grenard was pressing 1,000 snaps last year, which is just not something we see so much. I think you can rotate him in, spot him in different positions, use him in different ways. And again, if he doesn't come out with 12 sacks or something, we don't need to look at it like that was a failure if he played that particular role where he fits in right now. But I think this is the right kind of defense to
Yeah.
have somebody that is rotating in and playing a lot of different spots. It just might not result in the biggest box score stats for him.
And the one thing that I really dislike when fans look at the game and they judge players, they only look at the box score sometimes. And like especially for defensive ends and outside linebackers, they just look at that sack production. And I understand that's what gets them paid. But are you a disruptive football player? Can you eat up two players, two offensive linemen to allow one of your buddies to get on the edge and get free? And all the stunts and twists that Brian Flores does in this defense, you have to be a complementary football player. And kind of like you talked about, can you put your hand in the dirt and then drop back? And that's one of those things that Brian Flores excels at for a quarterback that sees pressure coming from his left side and Dallas Turner's on the right side with his hand in the dirt. And then the next thing you know, pressure falls, comes, and then Dallas Turner's dropping back. Like those are skills that he had to learn and develop and things like that. And so sacks is not just something where, all right, he had 12 sacks, he's productive. Because a guy can have 12 sacks, but be useless in the run game or useless, like defending in zones and things like that. So you want a guy who's a complementary football player. And I think Dallas Turner is that. He just didn't have a lot of chances to show that this past season. But I think, like you said, in that Patrick Jones role where you just come in, you get after the quarterback, and then maybe, you give Jonathan Grenard a blow and you come in and you do some other stuff. I think he's going to be a really good football player for a long time.
I think their actions show us what they think, and we heard it the other day from Gennard and Metellus what they think about his mentality. Uh, I, from my perspective, I just don't like to judge a player on his rookie year. There's just
Mhm.
way too many players in the NFL who have come in slow as rookies that are 21 years old and then take big steps after that. But this will be pivotal for us to know what he's going to be. There's still 3 questions left to go because we've had a lot of great conversations here. So we can rapid fire them a little bit more because you have a
Let's do it.
life and a career and so forth. This one comes from Eric VK76. Says re-rank the 2024 draft quarterbacks. Well, this is going to be hard for us, Eric, because JJ McCarthy hasn't thrown any passes yet.
Right,
But
right.
if you were redrafting them, how would you do it? The first round quarterbacks from 2024. I think the conversation has to start with Jaden Daniels as the number one pick there.
That's unanimous. There's no question about it. He dominated, led his team to the playoffs. I mean, nearly the NFC Championship. So yeah, got to go Jaden Daniels. Caleb Williams certainly not number one after what he showcased.
Would you go Drake May or would you stay with Caleb Williams for the number two? Because I mean, again, we were just talking about how hey, don't judge Dallas Turner too much. Matt
Right,
Eberflus was
right.
his coach. It was kind of a
You have
disaster
to go Caleb
situation.
Williams too. Yeah, I still think you have to go with Caleb Williams too. He did show flashes. I think he's just one of those guys that try to continue doing what he was doing in college, and he didn't have a good offensive coordinator around him to say, "Hey, you got to get the ball out. You got to play with a little bit more pace in the National Football League." I think with Ben Johnson, he gets him on pace, gets him up to speed like an NFL quarterback. Um, s- I'm really not sold on Drake May, but like you said, you can't judge him off his rookie season. So like I really don't know what we have there. But you want to throw JJ McCarthy in there, but you don't know what he did. So it's like it's hard to reclassify that. I think you have to wait a couple of years before you do that. You have to get numerous seasons under their belts before you go back and trade it. But obviously Jaden Daniels would be he would be the number one overall pick if teams could go back, I'm sure.
The hard one is Bo Nix and where to put him because he had a good season and he got them to the
Right.
playoffs. But is there more there, or is that all that Denver's going to get out of him? And I thought it was just bizarre that they didn't add another wide receiver to that mix.
Dude.
They got a tight end for him to check down more to. I don't really get the team building strategy there.
Yeah.
But
I love what
when
you brought up because I think, like, did he reach his potential last year? Probably not, but did we see what we'll probably see from him the rest of his career? Probably. I'm sure he'll grow a little bit, but yeah, that's tough. Bo Nix would probably be. I mean, he'd probably still take Drake May over Bo Nix right now, just because of upside. And JJ McCarthy, we're just not sold on yet because he hasn't played. But I'm certainly sure after this year he'll be able to put his name in the top three.
right, you'd have to put it's weird, but you'd have to put Nix ahead of McCarthy at this moment because of the fact that
He
he's
played.
played and shown he can play well. But almost the minute we see JJ McCarthy show upside, is like, nope, actually that's gonna go
Yep.
ahead of that. Right. Because of the age, the talent, and so
Yeah.
forth. I think that's a fun question, but it's a really hard exercise when every guy was in a different place in his career. All right, two more, Ahmad. Medieval Sports 2 says, how do you feel about Jordan Addison's long term future with the team? More so extending him versus whatever his suspension is. Does he remain a Viking for a second contract? And how much is he getting, or he is an asset to be moved? Well, I'll start with the last part. I don't think that he is any guy you consider moving unless there's other off the field stuff. He is just too good. Wide receivers are too valuable. Absolutely not. I think as far as I know these are questions for you. Sorry, I just went in on this.
No, you're good.
But as far as the contract in the future, that's yet to be determined. I mean, he's got to have a good offseason that doesn't have any police blotter, and then he's got to stay healthy and he's got to continue to perform. But then you might be looking at a T. Higgins and Jamar Chase situation where they do pay both of those guys.
You drafted him in the first round. I just don't see them letting him walk for nothing. I don't see them trading him at this point in his career because of the production that he's had already and what he's proved he can do when Justin Jefferson is out. He's certainly proved to be a number one wide receiver, and those are hard to come by, especially and then in this day and age when you talk about the passing and all those things, you have to have a 1A and 1B type wide receiver. So I don't see the Vikings moving on from him resigning. I mean, we're just so far away. He's having a good offseason right now. You haven't heard his name in anything. He went to Ghana with Brian Asamoah and Aaron Jones. They did some stuff for, the NFL flag football team there over in Ghana. So, he's doing good right now. He's here for OTAs and doing what he needs to do. He's showing his face at the Timberwolves games like he always does. So I think he compliments the Vikings and what they do here. I think the Vikings compliment him well. I think he understands Kevin O'Connell. And I asked Jordan, I know we're supposed to be rapid firing this, but Jordan Addison, I asked him last year, I was like, how do you get along and stay focused, locked in mentally as a wide receiver, knowing that you have the potential to be wide receiver one, but obviously you have to concede to Justin Jefferson. And he was like, you just got to trust the process, keep working. He's like, coaches see me on tape. He said they watch film. He's like, they see me getting open. He was like, they know what's up. He was like, so I feel like I don't think he's one of those guys that'll be greedy and be like, I need 90 million guaranteed. I want to be the highest paid receiver. I think he's like, you know what? If you pay me well and you pay me enough, I'm here as long as we have a chance to win. So I think he'll be here as long as the Vikings show their Super Bowl contenders.
And the Vikings will also have a fifth year option if they want to push this
Mhm.
down the road anymore. But I think the answer entirely to that question is it's up to him. It's up
Right.
to, we know that the potential is there. I think there's even more room for growth with
For sure.
him on a little bit more of a consistent basis. But the talent, the ability to track the football, the ability to get open one on one, the touchdown that he had against must have been the Packers where he ran that stop route, spun around and
Yeah.
went to the end zone. I mean, stuff
Yeah.
like that is
Yeah.
just rare talent. That one got a Steve Smith breakdown on YouTube because it was so good. That it is first round caliber talent. So if you just keep doing what you're doing, you're worth a lot of money and worth finding a way to make sure that he's here with Jefferson long term. But we also know there are potential pitfalls there. All right, last question for you. From Ankel's Chiro, you guys and your Twitter names. Will you watch The Fall of Favre when it's released on
Yes.
Netflix? Oh, you're gonna watch?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Appointment
Yes.
viewing for you.
Honestly, I saw that trailer the other day. I was like, oh, I was like, because some of these stories, like, I kind of knew about Favre, but it's like, I was a little younger coming up. So it's like you hear about this stuff, but you're not really invested in it. And then you become an adult and you're like, wait, he did this, he did what? And so I saw that trailer the other day while we were actually filming something on Fox Local called First and North, where it's a show where we have all the sports directors or sports media talent from the NFC North teams in Milwaukee, Detroit, Chicago. And I was playing that trailer and they're like, oh, that sounds juicy. I was like, yeah, I was like, I'm tuning in when this comes out. So I was never one of those Favre haters. But certainly he's done some things where it's kind of questionable, and I just want to see what went on, behind the scenes and what really went down. So yes, I will absolutely be tuning in. Will I be bashing him on X? No, I won't care to do that, but I do care to see what went on, and from this quarterback that I love watching to all the off the field antics.
So I actually don't know how old you are. Like, how much of Favre
32.
did you see? 30. Okay, so you saw a
I
lot of
watched I
Favre.
watched a lot
Okay.
of Favre. Like I didn't see like his beginning days and when he won the Super Bowl. So 99, 2000 was the year that I really got invested in football. The Rams, the greatest show on turf growing up in St. Louis. So that was my first team that I ever got a chance to watch. So I was really spoiled, and then we were just, put in misery for the next 10 to 12 years in St. Louis. But yes, I did watch a lot of Favre. I was a big fan of him.
Hey, St. Louis Battlehawks are a heck of a
Fun
ticket
time.
there in the UFL. So this is what it's the small age gap between us is enough to be different with Favre, because for me this could be hard. Favre was like the guy that makes you love football when
Mm.
you grew up from. I mean, for me, it was 1994 is probably the first year that I become like very aware of all things in sports. And was that the year that he shared the co MVP with Barry Sanders? My brother and I, backyard football, the kids in the neighborhood, we're Favre, we're Sanders, we're Dion, we're it's like all this stuff, right? And for him to have the things happen that he happened along the way, whether it was the Jen Sturger thing or definitely what's gone on since then, it's just hard to look at, right? If
Yeah,
because you appreciate so much the way that he played. It wasn't just how good he was; it was also the joy that he played with. I mean, I think every person who grew up watching him, he's one of the main reasons that you have this deep ingrained joy for football. That every time you turn it on, you love football is because of how much he loved football. So seeing the pain of that behind the scenes, some of the things that are going to be pretty ugly. I don't know if I want to do it, man. I don't know. That's just hard. I know we're journalists, so like we always look at the burning building,
for
right?
sure.
But it's like,
Right.
man, I don't know. I don't know if I
I
want to subject
understand.
myself.
Because that could just it could kind of make you look at your childhood entirely different. Like you're like, man, like this is the guy I idolized. But I think it's okay to separate the two. Like, you know what,
Mhm.
like this is still a good part of my childhood. Like these memories help form me into who I am today. But I understand, you questioning if you want to watch it. That's a tough thing to do, especially for a player you idolize. But me just being the sports junkie that I am and those documentary type things, it's like I can't stay away from it, man. Like I just love that stuff. That's why I'm in news right now. Cause like I love telling those untold stories. Like I feel like everyone has a story. But just because you're an athlete, you don't only get to hear the good all the time. And it's something I talk about on my podcast with my buddy who's in the NFL. Must be two sides. Like athletes always want to be covered a certain way, but us as media members and journalists, we have an obligation to our viewers and the fans at home to cover you the way, that not the way they want to be covered, but the way they should be covered. And we have to cover the good, but we also have to cover the bad. And so that's why I'm a junkie for documentaries and specials like that.
Ahmad Hicks TV on Twitter/X. We'll go with. But you mentioned the podcast. It's not just a friend of yours; it's also a former Minnesota Viking, Michael
Yeah.
Pruitt,
Hmm.
who was a tight end for the Vikings. Has played for a bunch of different teams, and you're doing the NFC North podcast. So please tell people where they can find those two things.
So the Must Be Two Sides podcast with my buddy, my best friend since high school, Michael Pruitt. You can find that on YouTube. Just search our podcast channel, Must Be Two Sides. And then First and North is something you can find on Fox Local. That is something we stream every Tuesday, and then it airs in Chicago. And I think it touches our platforms, Fox Local, around like 9 o'clock. So if you just search First and North, you'll be able to see us talk about the NFC North all year long. Literally, we don't stop. We start we started last year during preseason, and we haven't stopped talking about the football in the NFC North, every Tuesday. So it continues there on Fox Local.
That is very cool. Well, 9 questions with Fox 9's Ahmad Hicks. Really appreciate it. I like the bit. I think we got to do it again. We'll have to improve our ability to do rapid fire, but this was really great to have you on the show for the first time, Ahmad, and we will absolutely do it again. Thanks for your time, man.
I appreciate you having me, and I'm sorry I'm a little long-winded at times.
I don't think that's how I've ever been accused of that myself, but no, I enjoyed it.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.